Hello. Uh, I'd like to touch on from my last video about what you watch, what what YouTube videos you watch, what news channels you watch, and what movies you watch, and all the newspapers you read, uh, even the classes you take at school. Uh, you talk about, you know, what Trump said today. Uh, you know, all those things are building. They're building blocks and they build on each other. And they're all designed in the same, with the same vein in mind. It's not informing, it's controlling. Uh, as you can see with, um, there was a protest at a ICE facility in Jersey just recently, and I think it's still going on. But there were pro-ICE and anti-ICE people there, and I think if you went to the anti-ICE people, they have a certain line of speech that they talk to each other about while they gather together like they do, and the pro-ICE people have their line of speech and what they consider to be right and what's wrong. And obviously, those two dynamics are opposing each other. Uh, and I think the pro-ICE people you would find are Fox News watchers, you know, uh, to a very large degree. Uh, they read the Post, they read certain newspapers that lean to the right, um, because everybody wants their bullshit validated and confirmed and justified, and that's the news, that's the movies, that's the YouTube videos they seek out, because when they see that headline, they're attracted to it because, oh, someone's going to validate my bullshit. I got to watch that, you know. And of course, they don't say in the video, we're here validating your bullshit, but they are, and they know they are. And that's the reason for the headline to get you to come in. Uh, you know, they know how to attract you. They've trained you for all these years. You're trained like Pablo's dog. When you see the pellet, your mouth waters, and you're trained like a Pablo's dog. And the funny thing is, they do all these behavioral experiments on dogs, monkeys, and rats and stuff, and don't think that what they find and what they learn they don't use on you. Uh, they orchestrate in you. You think like cosmetics or pharmaceuticals or animal tested. Why do they do that? Because they're going to use them on you. And if the mice die, they're not going to use that on you. They'll tweak it so the mice doesn't die, and then they'll use it on you and see if you die. And they'll do trials and see what because when you see an ad for a pharmaceutical, it's more of the list of side effects than it is what it actually does. And some of those side effects are pretty scary. But everybody thinks, oh, that's not going to happen to me. Meanwhile, it happened to somebody, and that's why it's on the list. You know, so it could happen to you. But we're so trained to ignore those kinds of things. It's like the fine print on a contract. Nobody reads the fine print on a contract. That's why it's written in fine print on the contract. But when you go to court and you try to fight something, they'll say, well, you can't do that because it's in the fine print in the contract you signed. So there's a reason for it to be there. They didn't put that there for no reason. A lawyer got paid a lot of money to write that fine print. They're not saving paper or ink when they put it in fine print. They're trying to hide something. That's why it's there. because they know you're not going to read it. And it's written in such legalese that even if you read it, you'd be like, "What the hell is this?" Section UC, all this. And you're like, "What the hell is Section UC?" It's all crap. It's all crap. It's all bullshit. But it's just when you partake in, like, I'm not saying don't watch Fox News, but I'm saying don't make Fox News the only news show you watch. Make yourself well rounded. The problem with Fox News is they don't invite a lot of Democratic people on their show that give a false or alternate narrative. They don't allow that on their show. Um, and that's a red flag. That's they don't want to ruin their show. you know, it's like nobody goes on Johnny Carson and says, "Johnny Carson, you're not funny. You really suck. You should stop smoking and all that stuff." Nobody goes on Johnny Carson and using Johnny Carson. He's old, I know, but uh, nobody went on Stephen Colbert and said, "You're not funny," except Donald Trump, who got him fired. But it's just they promote their show, they promote their narrative, and they're not going to have anti-narrative people on there. And Fox News and CNN, they do that, uh, but and a lot of the guests won't go on the show, even if they were invited. They won't. They don't want to be subject to that, which I think is a mistake. I think if you're invited to go on Fox, you should, especially if you're uh, a anti-conservative or non-pro-conservative. Because the world needs your side of the point of view, as they need the conservative. There's nothing wrong with conservative um, or liberal. It's when it's taken to the extreme, which we see Donald Trump is at the extreme of conservative, and you know, and Bernie Sanders is at the extreme of liberal, and somewhere in the middle is where we have to meet. And those middle people get edged out. They get filtered out of the system because nobody wants, to them it's boring. It's like when you talk about if you're a conservative Republican, you have to talk about beheading Democrats. You can't be like, "Oh, well, let's meet across the aisle," and come to an agreement. No, that's boring. That's not what they want to hear. They want to hear you want to slay them. You want to kill. You want to end their reign. And make them look foolish, like Trump's new word, Democrats. And it's all narrative. It's all trying to manipulate and brainwash you and indoctrinate you into a system where you have no control, and you just you're just Pavlov's dog. You're just sitting there waiting to salivate. And I was just watching a video how beeping. They say everything beeps. Your phone beeps, your car beeps, your refrigerator beeps when you open the door. Uh, Soon it's gonna beep when the fruit the fruit container is empty. The beeping is just out of this world, and it's Pavlov's dog. They're training you. They're manipulating. They're controlling you, and they learn this through all the experiments on dogs and monkeys and stuff to see how they react. And it's a form of brainwashing. It's a form of control. All the beeping things because like when you get in your car and that beep goes off when you didn't put the seatbelt on, you'll run to get the seatbelt on just to get rid of the beep. So it controls you. And and like now it's become that if you don't hear a beep, well, you think there's nothing wrong and you think there's no reason. It's like when your phone doesn't ring, you think, well, nobody's trying to call me. And that can be a problem because you're used to the phone ringing, and that's why they give you all these notifications. because it's every time there's a notification, your watch vibrates or your phone uh, vibrates, and you know you got a notification, and you have to check it. And it's probably like with the watch, it's probably telling you to stand up. It's a crappy notification. Uh, but yet we're trained uh, to the annoyance of these things, and it translates out into the world. We bring it to our children, and our children bring it to their children, and as more and more life becomes more electronic devices, when you hook up your Bluetooth speaker, it beeps to tell you it's connected. So we're really trained in that beep world, and I really appreciate that video that I saw because it it really explains how we're so easily trained. We think we're like so sophisticated and so uneasy to train, but we're not. We're really not. It's like that wild Mustang that we once were. We once were a wild Mustang, but now we're a gelding. You're not nobody's a stallion anymore. Everybody's a gelding. They've been castrated at birth, and they never grew into their balls, and because they don't have any. And you wonder why men aren't men anymore, and women are more like men than men. And it's insane. And the more you continue this, the worse it's going to get. And that's the problem. It's going down the road. You're not looking at a good future. You're looking at a horrible future um, because it's going to have very negative effects. So stop watching all these videos. Stop participating.